My room, my safe space. It's where I retreat when the world outside becomes too overwhelming. A place where I can be myself without any pretenses. The walls are adorned with posters of my favorite bands, each one telling a story of a concert I attended or a song that resonated with me during a particular phase of my life. Covered in glow-in-the-dark stars, posters of my favorite bands, and a fluffy rug that tickled my toes. The stars on the ceiling are a reminder of the nights I spent dreaming about the vast universe, wondering what lies beyond the stars. The fluffy rug, a gift from my grandmother, adds a touch of warmth and comfort, making the room feel even more inviting. It was my haven, especially at night. The soft lighting created an ambience that was both calming and soothing, perfect for unwinding after a long day. The gentle glow from the lamps cast a warm hue across the room, making it feel like a cozy cocoon. I loved snuggling under my covers, the streetlights painting shadows on my wall. Those shadows would dance and shift, creating patterns that I would often lose myself in, letting my imagination run wild. It was a nightly ritual, a moment of peace before drifting off to sleep. The familiar hum of my nightlight was comforting. It was a constant in my ever-changing world, a small beacon of light that chased away the darkness. The soft glow it emitted was like a gentle hug, wrapping me in a sense of security. It chased away the monsters under my bed, or so I thought. Tonight, something felt off. The usual comfort of my room seemed to wane, replaced by an unsettling feeling that I couldn't quite put my finger on. The shadows that once danced playfully now seemed to loom ominously. A chill snaked through the air, making me shiver. It was as if the room itself had taken on a life of its own, the temperature dropping inexplicably. The once warm and inviting space now felt cold and unwelcoming, sending a shiver down my spine. I pulled my blanket tighter, trying to ignore the prickling sensation on the back of my neck. It felt as though unseen eyes were watching me, the hairs on my neck standing on end. I tried to convince myself it was just my imagination, but the feeling persisted, making it hard to shake off the sense of unease. The ticking of the clock seemed louder than usual, each second stretching into an eternity. The sound echoed in the silence, amplifying the tension that hung in the air. I found myself counting the ticks, trying to distract my mind from the growing fear. My eyes darted around the room, searching for any sign of movement. Every creak and groan of the house seemed magnified, each one making my heart race faster. I told myself it was just the house settling, but the rational part of my brain struggled to keep the fear at bay. I reached for the flashlight on my bedside table, my hand trembling slightly. The beam of light cut through the darkness, illuminating the familiar objects in my room. But even with the light, the sense of unease didn't dissipate. It was as if the very air was charged with an unseen presence. Taking deep breaths, I tried to calm myself. Inhale, exhale. I repeated the process, focusing on the rhythm of my breathing. Slowly, the tightness in my chest began to ease. But the feeling of being watched lingered, a constant reminder that something was not quite right. I lay back down, pulling the covers up to my chin. The warmth of the blanket was a small comfort, but it did little to dispel the cold that seemed to seep into my very bones. I closed my eyes, willing myself to fall asleep, hoping that the morning light would chase away the shadows and the fear. As the first light of dawn began to filter through the curtains, the room slowly returned to its familiar, comforting self. The warmth of the sun chased away the lingering chill, and the shadows retreated, taking with them the sense of foreboding. My room, my sanctuary, was once again a place of peace and safety. My eyes darted to my closet. Its dark wooden door was slightly ajar. I always closed it before bed, always. I blinked, trying to clear my vision. There, in the sliver of darkness, was a figure, tall, impossibly thin, shrouded in shadows. I squeezed my eyes shut, my heart pounding like a drum solo. "Just my imagination," I whispered, my voice trembling. I peeked through one eye. The figure was still there, unmoving, silent. I blinked again, and my blood ran cold. The figure was closer, its form more defined. It was as if it was being pulled closer with every blink I took. Terror choked my throat. I couldn't scream, I couldn't move. I was frozen, trapped in a nightmare. Each blink brought it closer, its form solidifying. It was like watching a horror movie, but this was real. This was my room. Doubt gnawed at me. Was it real, or was my imagination playing tricks on me? Maybe it was just a coat rack, its shadow distorted in the darkness, but deep down, I knew. This was no coat rack. This was something sinister, something that sent shivers down my spine and made my breath catch in my throat. I wanted to run, to escape the suffocating grip of fear that held me captive, but my legs felt like lead, my body refusing to obey my commands. Section 5. The closet door creaks open. The closet door creaked open, the sound like nails scraping against a chalkboard. The figure moved, its long, thin arms reaching out from the darkness. My breath hitched. I squeezed my eyes shut, wishing, praying for this to be a bad dream, but the creaking continued, each sound amplifying my terror. I couldn't wait any longer. I had to see what lurked in the shadows. I had to face my fear. I forced my eyes open, bracing myself for the worst. My heart pounded in my chest, each beat echoing in my ears like a drum. The room was cloaked in darkness, the only light coming from the faint glow of the moon filtering through the curtains. I could feel the cold sweat trickling down my forehead, my breath coming in short, ragged gasps. I knew I had to face whatever was lurking in the shadows, but every fibre of my being screamed at me to close my eyes and hide under the covers. The figure stood just outside my closet, its form no longer a blur. It was as if the darkness itself had taken shape, solidifying into a menacing presence. I could see the outline of its body, tall and imposing, casting a long shadow that seemed to stretch across the room. My mind raced, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Was it real or just a figment of my imagination? But deep down, I knew the answer. This was no dream. This was a living nightmare. It was tall and skeletal, its limbs impossibly long and thin. The way it moved was unnatural, almost as if it were gliding rather than walking. Its bony fingers twitched and curled, as if eager to reach out and grab me. I could see the joints of its limbs protruding grotesquely under its pale, almost translucent skin. It was a sight that defied logic, something that shouldn't exist in the realm of the living. Yet there it was, standing before me, a harbinger of terror. But it was the face that chilled me to the bone. It was a face that seemed to be carved out of pure malice, every feature twisted into a mask of horror. The eyes were sunken deep into their sockets, surrounded by dark, hollow circles. The skin was stretched tight over the skull, giving it a gaunt, almost skeletal appearance. It was a face that spoke of untold suffering, a visage that had seen the darkest corners of existence. Its eyes glowed with an eerie light, piercing through the darkness. They were like twin orbs of malevolence, burning with an intensity that seemed to bore into my very soul. I couldn't look away, trapped in their hypnotic gaze. It was as if those eyes held the secrets of the abyss, a window into a world of endless torment. I felt a shiver run down my spine, my body frozen in place, unable to move or even scream. Its mouth was stretched into a grotesque grin, revealing rows of sharp, pointed teeth. The smile was a mockery of joy, a twisted parody of happiness. Each tooth was like a dagger, gleaming in the dim light, ready to tear into flesh. The grin seemed to widen with each passing second, as if the creature took pleasure in my fear. It was a smile that promised pain, a harbinger of the horrors that awaited me. It was a face I would never forget, a face that would forever haunt my nightmares. Even now, as I recount this tale, I can still see it in my mind's eye, as vivid as the night I first saw it. That face, with its glowing eyes and sinister grin, is etched into my memory, a permanent scar on my psyche. It is a reminder of the darkness that lurks just beyond the edge of our reality, waiting to pounce when we least expect it. And no matter how much time passes, I know that face will always be there, lurking in the shadows of my mind, a constant reminder of the terror that once gripped my soul. The figure took a step towards me, its long, bony fingers twitching. I was paralyzed with fear, my body refusing to respond. I wanted to scream, to run, but I couldn't. It leaned closer, its putrid breath washing over me. The stench of decay filled my nostrils, making me gag. Don't be afraid, it rasped, its voice like dry leaves crunching underfoot. I'm just here to play. I squeezed my eyes shut, unable to bear the sight of it any longer. I waited for the touch of its icy fingers, for the pain to start, but there was nothing. I slowly opened my eyes, my heart still pounding in my chest. The figure was gone. The closet stood open, empty. Had it all been a dream, a figment of my overactive imagination? I scrambled out of bed, my heart pounding in my chest like a drum. The darkness around me felt suffocating, as if it were closing in from all sides. I could barely catch my breath, my mind racing with thoughts of what I had just seen, and raced to turn on the light. My fingers fumbled for the switch, trembling with fear. When I finally managed to flip it, the room was instantly flooded with light, but it did little to calm my nerves. The room was bathed in a warm glow, chasing away the shadows. But the fear remained, a cold knot in the pit of my stomach. The light revealed the familiar surroundings of my bedroom, but it couldn't erase the image that was burned into my mind. A cold knot in the pit of my stomach. I clutched my stomach, trying to steady my breathing. My eyes darted around the room, searching for any sign of the figure I had seen, but there was nothing, just the lingering shadows in the corners. I never saw the figure again, but the memory of that night haunted me. Every time I looked at the closet, I couldn't help but feel a shiver run down my spine. It was as if the darkness itself was hiding something sinister. But I never forgot that night. The memory lingered, a constant reminder that sometimes the monsters are real. They may not be the ones from our childhood nightmares, but they exist in the shadows of our minds, waiting for the right moment to strike. A constant reminder that sometimes the monsters are real. They lurk in the corners of our vision, just out of sight, waiting for us to let our guard down. And when we do, they pounce, feeding on our fear and growing stronger with each passing moment. And sometimes they lurk in the shadows of our closets, waiting for the moment we blink. The closet door, slightly ajar, seemed to mock me, daring me to look inside. But I couldn't bring myself to do it. The fear was too great, the memory too fresh, waiting for the moment we blink. From that night on, I was never the same. The fear had taken root deep within me, and no amount of light could chase it away. I found myself constantly on edge, jumping at every little noise and shadow. I always slept with the lights on. It was the only way I could find some semblance of peace. The warm glow of the lamp became my shield against the darkness, a barrier between me and the monsters that lurked in the shadows. But even then, the fear never truly went away. It was always there, lurking just beneath the surface, waiting for the moment I let my guard down.